left off, we started to learn about the 13 principles of faith. And we gave you some homework.
Yes.
Can I see your homework? Have you done the work? More importantly,
I looked at I reviewed it, but I did not write it down.
I didn't do it.
To memorize 13?
No, that wasn't the task.
It's
Task
to compare.
to look at the Yigdal.
Compare the Yigdal versus.
You didn't do that.
the-
Didn't do that.
I did do Yigdal this morning.
You did. Oh, you read it. Okay.
I read it,
Wow.
but that wasn't the homework. Okay.
Okay.
Well, let's turn to it now and take a look at it.
Yitgal is.
Where's it distributed?
Like on one of the first pages, like,
It's after the
Page
morning
35.
blessings.
Page 35. We had the introduction. How there's a little reticence
Yes. Okay.
from other Rishonim to get involved in this whole endeavor of writing down articles of faith. Russell asked me yesterday, why did it only happen here the first time? It's not only why did it only happen by the Rambam for the first time. It wasn't quite the first time, but you're right that not a lot of people, and even after the Rambam, not a lot of people get involved in that. And a beautiful story by Rav Hutner that, it's only when you're sick that you really have to pay attention, notice the difference between the different components of your body. Same thing when you're in the soul and your spiritual state. If you're just you have a healthy faith in Judaism, you don't really have to dissect it. So, but nonetheless, the Rambam did a great service and fleshed out a lot of our beliefs for us. And we live in a world where we're coming from many different cultures, different religions, at different places. So it's good to, be on the same page and review some of the basics. One more comment just before we go inside. Let's take a look at the footnote. Footnote number 25 on page 35. He said that the Arizal was against reciting the poem Yigdal, and he quotes here from Rav Chaim Vital. Rav Chaim Vital was the primary student of the Arizal, and he spells it out quite clearly what he had against reciting this poem. A lot of we mentioned it a few times when we were talking about prayer. We said there's different nusach, Ashkenaz and Sfard and Sfaradim, and we said how the Ari influenced our orders of prayers so much. Who remembers a section that was added in every day because of the Arizal's direction?
Can I make a guess?
Go for it.
Ein Kalahena.
Not bad. Not bad, but I don't recall that was connected to the Arizal.
No. Okay.
No, that's quite an ancient poem. Goes way back.
was the Akedah?
Nope, it wasn't the Akedah.
Huh.
The Arizal suggests that we do the Vidui, not only on Yom Kippur and the 13 attributes of mercy, not only during the Slichot, but also every single day. The Arizal. And the Nusach Sfar took that on, and so that's what they do here in the Shiva. Shachrit and Mincha, they do the Vidui after.
Does the Ashkenaz do it or no?
So the Ashkenaz, some do. Some communities took on to do the Vidui and the 13 Midot, attributes of mercy, only on Mondays and Thursdays.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they do in
With
the
the
school
long
here next
talking.
time. Yeah, once it's already going long, go longer.
Yeah.
I don't know why exactly that happened, but the people who, there are still, I think there are communities, Ashkenaz, who don't say it at all until the high holidays, I think. But the Arizal was very influential. But let's take a look and read some of the words of his disciple, Rabbi Chaim Vital, lived in Tzfat in the 16th century. Okay, who can read for us the footnote the paragraph at the bottom, page 35. Know that my teacher, Rabbi Isaac Luria. Go ahead.
Sorry, know that my teacher.
The last 2 lines.
The last 2 lines on page 35.
Yeah, underneath. Yeah, all the way at the bottom of the page.
Oh, sorry. See, there I see. Know that my teacher, Rabbi Yitzhak Luria, of blessed memory, would not recite the ancient hymn.
Any religious hymn.
Any religious hymn arranged by the authorities, such as
By later authorities,
By
I think
later.
is an important word here.
Sorry,
Because
early
this
morning.
is the distinction he's making, that the Arizal really showed favoritism. Another thing we were learning about the difference between the Rishonim and the Acharonim, right? The first 500 years of the millennium versus the last 500 years, right? 1000 to 1500, we call that the Rishonim period.
Yes.
So this is to say he wouldn't recite anything that's from the later period. Go ahead.
Such as Rabbi Salomon ben
Gavirol, page 34,
Page
underneath the line is where it continues.
Gavirol underneath the line. Gavirol. Oh, for these later authorities did not know Kabbalah and did not know what they were saying, especially Yigdal, Elohim Chai, etc. And likewise Vidui, Shamnu, etc. And likewise on Yom Kippur he would not say the Vidui of Rabbeinu Nissim and Rabbi Shem Tov Ardutiel and Rabbi Yitzhak ben Israel, each of whom composed a Vidui. But he would say prayers and hymns composed by the early authorities, such as the prayer of Rabbi Akiva and the prayer of Rabbi Elazar ben Arach, and the prayer of Rabbi Nemenya ben Hakanech. Likewise, he would say all the hymns composed by Rabbi Eliezer Kalir that are found in the Machzor of the Ashkenazim. For these early authorities composed their words according to the wisdom of truth, Kabbalah, and they knew what they composed, even if the hymns occur in the midst of the Birkat Yotzer. He would say them, for they were Tanaim, and knew what they were composing, and all their words were based upon the wisdom of truth. And I heard in the name of my teacher of blessed memory that the Kalir who arranged the Kerovets in the Machzor of the Ashkenazim is Rabbi Eliezer ben Rabbi Shimon.
We'll stop here. This is a tradition that some of the hymns that we recite in the Siddur, we know that they're composed by someone called Rabbi Eliezer HaKalir. Kalir. Maybe he was from a town called Kalir. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe this is family name. I don't know. But we're not sure who he is, when he came from. So he says there is a tradition that it's no other than Rabbi Elazar from the Tannaitic time, the contemporary of Rabbi Akiva, way back in the Tannaitic time. There is a tradition like that. In any case, so the editor of this Siddur concludes, so it is not as if Yigdal was singled out for Ari's displeasure. Ari meaning Rabbi Yitzchak Luria. That's the acronym. The acronym. Ha-Eluki Rabbi Yitzchak. Aleph Resh Yud. Ari. He's called the Ari. The Eluki Rabbi Yitzchak. He confined himself to prayers and hymns of the Tanaim, or at least those ascribed to Tanaim. Although modern scholarship dates Elazar Kalir in the 6th or early 7th centuries, the Balei Tosfot believed him to be the Tana Rabbi Elazar ben Rabbi Shimon. See Tosfot Chagiga. Okay, so there's a debate exactly who he was. Well, it's a couple hundred years way this way or that way, but that is a little bit more about this hymn. Yigdal. It's composed not by one of the Tanaim, and that's why the Ari didn't recite it. He had this thing, he was the big Kabbalist, and he said only somebody who knew Kabbalah could really know what he's talking about. And so he was a little bit picky. But nonetheless, Yigdal has made its way into our Siddur, and it's a beautiful poem, and it directly parallels the 13 principles that we went through yesterday. So let's take a look now. Sorry that Moshe's not here. He loves to sing with us. Many people know this tune. Yigdal.
It's the same as 13 Principles.
the same. Let's take a look. Let's do it in English, I guess, because we don't know Hebrew right? Yet.
Great.
You're on level 2, Opa, 3?
I finished level 2, but I've been reading liturgical Hebrew for years now. so
Amazing. Great.
It helps.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and David, how's your Hebrew level? You're just Opan level 1 or
I don't know the level, but I haven't been to open here yet.
not yet?
But I can read.
You can read. Okay, great. Right, and you're 1, right? I think we said that. Good. Yeah, all right. Well, 1 comes before 2, 2 comes before 3.
I can read.
That's where to start.
Maybe, how about we rotate, no?
I think we're just going to do it in English
Sure.
for this class where it's not open. We don't want to waste our time. And I want to make sure we have time to say something about the Parsha. It's Thursday, every Thursday. I didn't get a chance to devolve the task upon one of you. But for next week, I'm going to give you a heads up. Jacob, I want you to do next week.
Oh no. Okay.
You
I'll
got
do
a
it.
whole week.
I got a whole week.
You got a whole week.
Listen, I
Next
have
Thursday
one
morning.
day to prepare.
Next.
Yeah. Other people have done it on a Monday notice. This is better. I'm giving you a whole week.
I
Okay.
know. I appreciate it.
Okay.
I need a whole week.
It's just 2 minutes, but sometimes something very short takes longer to prepare.
Okay.
Today I'll say something, but there's other shit next week. Let's start with the Yigdal. And great is the living God and praised.
Great is the living God and praised. He exists and his existence is beyond time.
Okay, so what is that parallel to?
The second one. There's the second 13 principle faith.
The second of the 13?
Yeah,
It's
there's
interesting.
nothing like him.
It's
His existence
true.
beyond time.
It's true. Let's
But also the first
let's
one.
keep our hands on the other on the list. What page was that on yesterday?
Um,
2.
75 or something. I believe.
Let's see.
No, wait.
Was it
It's
275? You're right. You're right.
Oh,
275.
existence is beyond time, and then here it says
Well,
Hashem alone is master and creator of the universe.
so because the second one, if you just read the next paragraph, he is one. Go ahead.
He is one, and there is no unity like his.
Unfathomable, his oneness is infinite.
I
So
felt like
that
those two
I
were kind of-
think, yeah, that one sounds like more parallel to number 2, because number 2 talks about his unity, right? That he's one. There's no oneness like him. So I think number 2 is clearly like number 2. So maybe number 1 is his attempt at whoever wrote this
they're
poem.
kind of merged in my.
Yeah.
So
We talked about that yesterday. How you could condense them, but
Yeah.
the distinction that the way the Rambam wrote it, the first one maybe.
correspond to Dalet, like to the fourth principle.
First and
He's
last.
the first and the last.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But when we
that's
get
what
to
I
the
was
4th paragraph, there's going to be something like that, first and
Right.
last.
Yeah.
I think we really have to stick to the order,
thinking. Okay. So,
right? We have to stick to the order, or we won't be doing it service. So it's interesting. This first principle, yesterday we were talking about it, that it says that he is the creator. If you look on page 274, right? Creates and rules all creatures. Keep your
But here it
finger.
doesn't
Keep your
say-
finger in both
it
places, right?
doesn't say that he's the creator here. It just says he exists.
True.
Mhm.
True.
So that's why I didn't.
And
say
and I was wondering really why he started with being the creator when the Rambam clearly says it's not a principle of faith. And so Moshe suggested yesterday that it was perhaps because that's the way the Torah starts. Words of the Torah are Bereshit bara Elokim, that God created the world. But ultimately what the Rambam was getting after was not so much the creator aspect, but the very fact that he exists.
Right.
And
True.
he makes and will make all things. So him being the maker of all things, it's a little bit of a red herring here. I think the Rav Shlomo Ibn Gebirol, who made up the Yigdal, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh.
Good morning. The author of the poem he just says Nimtza, he exists. And his existence is beyond time. It's not so much about making things, but it's about being, his very existence. So I think they're right the author here is right in getting to the crux of the matter in principle number 1. The crux of the matter is not that he's the creator and makes all things. As I said yesterday, it's a little bit of it's sort of like a later mystical understanding. Right? Knocked on the table, said God is in, He makes all things, God is in everything, but that's not really the Rambam's worldview. And so his translation here into He exists and His existence is beyond time seems to be true to the original text, which we have not yet seen, the original text of the Rambam. We're going to look at it together and compare it. But yeah.
I'm going to say that the list that we read yesterday, it seems to take for granted that God just exists. It's not a matter of what you believe it or not. It's a fact that it's just there. It doesn't matter whether you believe it because He does. And that reminds me of like a very ancient way of thinking for people like thousands of years ago. It wasn't a matter whether you believe that God exists. That God does exist, and whether you choose to respond to that or not is going. That's really the important thing. And how do you live in the reality of that existence? And it seems like a different way of thinking to me.
Yeah, definitely. That's the first building block of the worldview, is that God exists, right? So that's probably what the principle number one. That's probably what the Rambam meant, and so the phraseology on page 274 is a little bit of a red herring, as I said, and the Yigdal version actually does it more service because it gets to the heart of the matter, which is the living God is great in praise. He adds in some praise because it's a beautiful poem, but He exists and existence beyond time is the critical point. And you're right, David, that the idea of Him being eternal, it gets repeated in number 4. But that's why the emphasis, I guess, should be on that He exists. Okay, number 2, second paragraph is He is one. There's no unity, like His unfathomable. His oneness is infinite. So that's clearly parallel to principle number 2 on page 274. That there is no oneness like His. He's alone, who was, is, and ever will be.
Mm-hmm.
So His oneness is infinite. Again, that the was, is, and will be really should be in number 1, right? We said that yesterday. But the point is that His oneness is, or His uniqueness, right? Unfathomable. We said there's different interpretations of the God is one. It's not one and not two, but one in that He's other. This wholly other is totally unique. That comes out here. And the word for unfathomable in Hebrew, I just want to point this out to you, is Ne'elam. You see at the beginning of the 5th line on the page at 35. Ne'elam. The same word makes up the critical letters of the word Olam, which means the world. So God is Ne'elam. God is hidden in it. The Kabbalists speak about how godliness is hidden within this world, right? The world, its very name says it's a hidden world. Olam. It has that root to it. Unfathomable. So there's something unfathomable in our reality. Good morning, Amos. How are you? Amazing. Let's go to the next one. Ariel, you're reading so beautifully. Read the end of page 34, the 3rd paragraph.
He has neither body, form, nor substance. His holiness is beyond compare.
Okay, so it's not a little body or Dumut HaGuf, that He doesn't have any bodily form or substance.
Definitely.
His holiness is beyond compare. It's interesting He brings in the word holiness where that's not mentioned in the declaration on number 3. But nothing can compare to Him. Nothing can compare to Him. Dimion cloud. That's just 2 Hebrew words for the same thing. You can see in the English, it's the same. Nothing can compare. It's beyond compare. Clearly, that's parallel to number 3. Good. Let's go on. Turn the page. Page 36. Okay. Amos, can you read for us? Page 36 at the top of the page.
36?
Yeah.
So 1 page.
Well, no. You're on 2.
wait,
You're on 2. You're looking at that one. So keep your
that's
finger there.
principles.
You use these ribbons. That's what they're for. You put one ribbon there on page 274. And the other ribbon put on page 36.
Okay.
We're looking at the hymn Yigdal on page 36. I had an idea that you were not
I got it.
following, and that's why I called on you. It's an uncanny ability that I picked up as a teacher. They say that teachers have eyes in the back of their head. I don't think that's true. I can't see what's going on.
It's
And
the
somehow I have eyes
You can feel the energies.
Yeah,
36. It will be
So page 36, the top of the page.
the first
We're in-
paragraph.
yeah, the first paragraph.
He preceded all that was created. He was first. There was no beginning to him, to his beginning.
Okay, so he's preceded all that was created first. So what do you say? Let's go back to page 275, 4, and see. Is that parallel to
That's 4.
number 4?
Yeah,
It seems to be going quite in order, right?
Yeah.
First and last. First and last. Kadmon. Yeah, first and last. Here it doesn't talk much about the being last, but it says he's first. Okay. Next paragraph. Go ahead, Amos. One more. Read one more. Sorry, I know you're trying to compare to your Siddur.
I'm gonna go grab.
Behold,
grab my sitter.
he's the master of the universe, and every creature show his greatness and majesty.
Okay. Master of the universe, greatness and majesty. Do we have a parallel there?
Yeah, it's the fifth. Like he's the only one to be.
To pray to.
I thought it was
prophet.
1.
Mm.
Wait, you're talking about.
Right? We're talking about Master of the universe. Every creature shows his greatness and majesty.
Yeah, that does seem
Oh, wait.
parallel one on the other.
Okay.
list.
That's what I was thinking.
It's proper to pray just to him, because he's the only one.
So this gives us an insight into the one we were saying. Why is it part of the principles of faith that you have to pray to him? I understand the polemic against not praying to other gods, not bowing down to any other gods, and not praying to any other person. But here, if this is the parallel, it seems to be going in order so far. So let's assume if it is in parallel here, the point of that fundamental is
He's a creator.
his mastery, his majesty, his greatness. He is all powerful, master of the universe, right? Every creature shows his greatness and his majesty, right? So he's powerful. So if he's powerful, then you should pray to him, not to anybody else, right? If you want to get the job done, as they say. So you pray to the person with the power. You go to appeal to sometimes you can make your case against some kind of a clerk, in the government office, and he just says, sorry, you're talking to the wrong person. My hands are tied. I talk to my boss. He's the one that has the power to give you this, authority or change, whatever it is. But this doesn't seem to be turning on. Yeah, let's see. That helps. So that's interesting. So that sheds light on what we read yesterday, number 5, that you should only pray to God. It's not really a principle about prayer. It's a principle which says God is all powerful, right? What do we say in the philosophers when we're speaking about theology? That God is, he knows all, and he's all powerful. What's the fancy word for that?
Almighty.
Omnipotent.
Yeah,
Omnipotent, right? He can do everything, exactly. So I think that's number. We're up to 5 now. That's number 5. He's omnipotent, and that's the whole prayer thing is a derivative of that. And if he's the one who's omnipotent, who's the one who's powerful, you pray to him, not to anybody else. Okay, let's go on to number 6. What's the next paragraph on page 36? David, you want to read it for us?
Sure. It's the rich flow of his prophecy he gave to his treasured people in whom he gloried.
Okay, so what do we see in number 6 in page 274?
Well, it would be from principle to principle number 6.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The words
All
of
the
the
words
prophets
are true.
are true. Aha. So, interesting. Rich flow of prophecy he gave to his treasured people in whom he gloried. The very fact that there is prophecy, I think, is critical. As we're going to see, this is the beginning of a series I mentioned yesterday. 6, 7, 8, and 9. 6, 7, 8, and 9 all are part of one package, which Rav Yosef Albo put into one, which he said there is Torah from heaven, meaning there's such a concept as revelation, that God created the world, that he exists. We've been saying that up till now in various forms. Who is God? What does he do? How does he act? He's eternal. He's omnipotent. Fine. That was the first part. 1 through 5 basically was, theology 101. This next series, 6, 7, 8, 9, are parallel to Rav Yosef Albo's second principle, which is that there is Torah from the heavens, as he called it. In other words, that God not only created the world, and not only is he powerful, and this is a very big principle of Judaism. I agree with Yosef Abel. That's perhaps, you could say, really that's the only principle of Judaism. I've heard a rabbi here, Rav Shirky, say this. He said, if you look at Rav Yosef Abel, so the 13 moves into the 3 that we've already shown, that how really the first 5 can be the first principle that God exists, and then the next 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, the next 4, they all can be encapsulated into this idea of there's Torah revelation from the heavens, from God, and the last parts we'll get to in a minute, but they can all be encapsulated in a third principle, which is reward and punishment. Is that there's, it's ultimately some feedback loop within the system. Okay, so the feedback loop. This is Rav Sharkey. He teaches here at Machal Meir and other places. Very interesting teacher. He said, the feedback loop, that's not really a principle of faith. That's just the consequence. It's a part of reality of life. If you put your hand in fire, you're going to get burned. That's not really a principle of faith. And the first one, that God exists, how can we don't really understand anything about God if he's so unfathomable, if he's so beyond us. So then, it's very hard to define that and say that you must believe that. It's not something we can really sink our teeth into, because we're talking about things which are beyond us. So obviously we try, we say lots of things. We just said he's one, and he's, but ultimately it's hard to say that this is a thesis that you have to be convinced of. It's very hard to describe that. So what are we left with? We're left with the central core, these 4 principles, which is about revelation. Bottom line is, this is the core belief that's unique about Judaism, is that God came to people and told us X, Y, Z, right? I'm the God, Lord your God, who took you out of Egypt, and the 10 Commandments, and the Moshe, and all that. And then prophecy continued, and really, this is the core belief of Judaism, which is critical for all the books that we're sitting in. We're enveloped here by Torah tradition of thousands of years. It all stems from this one principle, that God reveals himself to us and tells us, gives us some messages. And of course, we can argue about exactly how to interpret that message, and that's what we continue to do every day. And we're going to continue to do that. That's our job. But the very core of it is, yes, God spoke to man, prophecy. And that starts here in number 6. And that's, what the way it was stated yesterday on page 274 was, I believe that all the words of the prophets are true. And I quoted to you from the blessing after the Haftarah, where we say, yes, all the words of the prophets are true, and they're going to come true, and we believe in it. But here we see that I think this poem gets to the core of the idea much better. It's the rich flow of his prophecy he gave to his treasured people, in whom he gloried. The very fact that there is prophecy, not so much that what they said is going to come true, and like we're fighting the fight for, is it going to come true? When's it going to come true? The very fact that there is prophecy is the gift itself. That's the principle itself, is that God speaks to man. Okay, next. Number 7. David, go ahead. So on page 36, never in Israel, go ahead, yeah.
Never in Israel has there arisen model like Moshe, a prophet who beheld God's image.
Okay, so this we saw clearly in principle number 7, that Moshe's prophecy was unique. No, another like Moshe. And so that's a nice parallel, a poetic version of number 7. Now let's go ahead, number 8.
Okay. So God gave his people a Torah of truth by the hand of his prophet Moshe, faithful of his house. Most faithful of his house. Okay.
So what was principle number 8? How was it stated yesterday in page 1 to 274?
The Torah that we got in Mount Sinai is whole and perfect. How it is. So there's nothing to be added to.
Actually, that's the next one. nothing to add to is number 9. Number 8 was that this Torah that we have is the one given to Moshe,
Yeah.
which, I mentioned yesterday that could be quite problematic. We talked about
yes.
broken telephone, and we talked about that. Although, I believe it in principle. Well, how does he restate it here in the poem? God gave his people Torah of truth
By the hand of his prophet.
most faithful of
Doesn't
his
say
house.
Moshe.
It says he gave him a Torah,
Yeah.
a Torah of truth.
Yeah.
And Moshe was
Yes,
faithful to
Torah.
giving us that Torah. So it doesn't have the problematic phrase of like the entire Torah. It sounds like word for word, letter for letter. The entire Torah in our hands. When we say Torah, we talked about it so many times. What does Torah mean? Does it mean the 5 books of Moses, or does it mean the entire corpus of Jewish tradition? Right?
Yeah.
Does it mean the oral law? So basically, this poetic version softens it up a little bit. Like I was saying with the prayer, it's not really about prayer. It's about his omnipotence. So to this principle number 8, it's not a discussion of the higher criticism question of the book. It's the principle that God gave his people a Torah of truth. That Moshe, okay, so prophecy means that God communicates with man. And then what's the result? The result is the Torah. The Torah is the result. That is the prophecy that Moshe faithfully communicated to the Jewish people. That's the core of the principle. And that, I think, is definitely, as I said, perhaps the core principle of Judaism, is that there's a Torah that we keep that was given to God, by God to Moshe and transferred to the Jewish people. That's principle number 7. Let's continue. Sorry, that was 8. Now, number 9. David, you're doing great.
Okay, so God will not alter or change his law for any other for eternity.
Okay.
Okay, then would that be the next one, principle number 9?
Yeah.
That's the
Torah will not be changed, right? Right, or not be exchanged.
Mhm.
Really, would be the better translation, muchlefet. As I mentioned before, perhaps the polemic against those other people who want, change the Torah or say there's a different testament, right? That seems to be going directly against this. Here in the original, in this poem, God will not alter or change his law for any other. For any other. Okay, so he's not going to replace it. Pretty much the same. Okay, next, Jacob, you ready? Read
Yes.
the next line on page 36 for us.
Yes.
He
He sees and knows our secret thoughts. As soon as something has begun, he foresees its end.
Okay, so he sees and knows even our secret thoughts, and he foresees it. So what's the parallel principle in number 10?
Well, it says basically the
He
same.
knows
thing.
all the deeds and thoughts of
Yeah.
humanity, and he quotes a pasuk. He finishes the eyes and comprehending all their deeds. Okay, so pretty much, what did we call it yesterday? This principle,
Omniscient.
omniscient. Omniscient is, we didn't say that yesterday. We talked about providence. That God, takes care. That's perhaps the next one is providence. This is omniscience, right? That God knows everything. And why is it here and not in the beginning with all the other omni? Right? We said God exists and is omnipotent as before, and that he's one. He's not going back to theology here. The point, right, which was the first group of principles, which was about defining God. This is more about his relationship to us. This is the beginning of the last four principles of faith are about how God relates to people and the fact that he knows what's going on with us. There's no watchmaker, no deism, right? We spoke about yesterday. It starts with this idea that first of all, he knows, and that leads us into the next one. Go ahead, Jacob. The next one is he rewards.
He rewards people with loving kindness according to their deeds. He punishes the wicked according to his wickedness.
Right, so that's reward and punishment.
Mhm.
Very clearly the next one. And so we have his omniscience is not just a theological idea. He knows everything. He knows, and therefore he knows what's going on, and therefore he can, he doesn't need any tattletales to tell him what so-and-so do. He knows what everybody did, and therefore, it can be the next principle that he rewards good deeds, punishes.
Just because when we mean deeds, we mean mitzvot, right?
All actions, really. Really,
I think
all
we,
actions.
It doesn't have to be a mitzvah.
Right.
Do something bad.
Well,
or something.
yeah, mitzvah. We spoke about it yesterday, right? We saw the books. There's 613, right?
Yes.
There's books that list them, but it's just like the word Torah, which is sometimes it's used to refer specifically to the 5 books,
Yes.
and sometimes it refers to everything.
Mm-hmm.
So to the word mitzvah. Sometimes it refers to one of the 613, and sometimes mitzvah just means to be a good thing to do. It's something. It's a
It's the
mitzvah.
right thing to do.
It's a mitzvah. It is a mitzvah to help the old lady across the street. It is a mitzvah to lend your friend a pen when he needs a pen to write something
But it's not a
down.
mitzvah from the
But it's
Torah.
not written in the 613. You could find and try to attach it to one of the 613. Which one would you attach it to? Helping the old lady across the street.
Helping or respecting elders.
Is there a mitzvah to respect others? No.
No.
Yeah, there
It's
is.
one of the ones 613 to respect. No.
Really?
You're supposed to, there's a mitzvah to respect your parents. That's one, but it's not your mother.
Would it be
Maybe it's like something to do with strangers.
Love your neighbor like yourself. Yeah? Love your neighbor like
that's a really
yourself.
good
That's a good one. That's a catch-all phrase, which
You can use
covers
that for
a
almost
lot of things between man and man, right? So love is basic. Good. So is it a mitzvah? And you say, oh, help me out. You'll be doing a mitzvah. We're not really thinking you'll be doing one of the 613. We're saying that you're doing a good deed. So here too, when he says you reward people according to their deeds, we believe that you're rewarded for every good deed that you do, even if it's not explicitly shaking the lulav or putting on tzitzit. Right? There's all the good deeds. They can be categorized as good or bad, and they're positive or negative, and reward and punishment. Okay. Next, Russell, you read for us at the end
Okay, so
of days.
at the end of days, he will send our Messiah to redeem those who await his final salvation.
Obviously, Mashiach, principle 12, and the last one.
God will revive the dead in his great loving kindness. Blessed forevermore is his glorious name.
Reviving of the dead, that's number 13. So he gets them all in here, 13 paragraphs, 13 principles. But the comparison was very enlightening, I believe. Really, it helps us get to the heart of the matter. The one about prayer, he didn't mention prayer at all. The one about, number 1, he didn't mention creation at all. He just says he exists. So we see that perhaps we were reading it correctly. And just to review what I was saying, that really there's 3 groups in parallel to the 3 principles that Rav Yosef Albo, sort of diminished the 13 to 3. The last group, number 10, 11, 12, and 13, they all, including Mashiach and the revival of the dead, it's all part of how God, you could call it reward and punishment, but the point is that there's a responsive loop, a feedback loop between our actions and God's actions in the world. It's a little bit more than that. 12 and 13 really seem to say that he's going to bring Mashiach and revive the dead. It's not really connected to our actions. So they do seem to be standalone principles. But as we said before, Rav Yosef Albo doesn't mind leaving them out. It's not that critical.
I got a question.
Yeah.
Like the 13th principle, could it be could it mean that like also reincarnation is possible?
It's a
Like,
good
is it-
question. It's not in there.
Okay.
The fact that the same soul comes to this world again and again and again. The Rav Sadia Gaon, that's before the Rambam, he wrote against the theory of reincarnation.
The Rambam.
Rav Sadia Gaon.
okay.
Rav Sadia Gaon. Although in the bird's eye view of Jewish philosophy, the history of Jewish philosophy, I would say that he is in a minority. I'd say most scholars, especially the Kabbalistic ones, they bring up this idea of reincarnation. So I'd say it's definitely not one of the 13 principles. And I would say that most Jewish scholars would say that that's the belief in reincarnation is a Jewish belief, but there's some different. Some say that's it's very big in India. It's very big in Buddhism,
Yes.
right? This whole idea of reincarnation. It's like it's a central tenet. And Judaism, as I said, most people probably believe in it, but definitely it's not the central way we live our life. That
Yes, right,
always
right.
thinking, oh, okay, whose
it is-
Gilgal am I? Right, the term Gilgal is the word
Yeah.
used in Hebrew for it.
But it is important to know that you're fulfilling the purpose of your past life in
hear.
a way where it's
Right,
you gotta fulfill everything that is.
right.
Given to you.
And definitely, it can be a comforting thought. It can be a motivating thought.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't base my religious life on it. In other words, I think that we're supposed to make the most of our 120 years
Mhm.
as best as we can, regardless of whether or not it's our final time or we're making up
Second,
for
third,
fixing
fourth.
what happened in a previous life.
Because we don't truly
Make
know.
the best judgment of what you should be doing now. That's our goal. And the bigger picture we really don't know, and it shouldn't really impact us that much. But if it does give you comfort, gives you a sense of meaning, a sense of purpose, that's not a bad thing. It's not it's not prohibited to think of reincarnation.
But that's not what it actually meant.
It's not in there. We just read them all 13. It wasn't there. It's definitely not a principle. As I said, it could be the Rambam didn't believe in reincarnation, like the Rav Saadia Gaon didn't believe in reincarnation. So it's not. Definitely wouldn't be beyond the pale. But I don't recall a specific discussion of the Rambam speaking about reincarnation. So the fact that he left it out seems to indicate that maybe he didn't believe it. I don't know. But maybe he didn't leave it out, and I just don't remember. I don't know. I'd have to look it up.
Maybe this could be for repentance, because in my commentary it says, let me read this. The dead will live again in the Messianic era. When the world will attain a new spiritual and physical level of perfection, those who have not been found too unworthy to enter this exalted state will live again to enjoy it. Which,
Very interesting. Very interesting.
So
So
if
the principle number 13 that speaks about the revival of the dead essentially is a form of reincarnation, really. That's what it is. And then maybe you get a second chance to do stuff that you didn't do in the previous life. It's not a series of a number of reincarnations, but if in the end the dead will rise and you'll all come back to live again. So that is essentially reincarnation. So if you understand it that way, revival of the dead is somewhat a little bit of the principle of reincarnation, right? It's not the big theory that we speak about in the Eastern religions. How all the souls are just being, recycled essentially, right? Okay, this is a good point. It's a good study. Okay, we're gonna leave it here for now. You can see why I asked you to write out the parallels. So I'm sorry that nobody did the homework, but there's a reason why I ask you to do the work. It helps. This is very enlightening, and we're going to continue the discussion next week. I want to say something about the Parsha. Please open up the Chumash. Can I have that one? Can you get another one like that from elsewhere?
Rabbi, would you mind telling me what page you're on once you get there?
Sure.
Appreciate it.
No problem. No problem.
I'll tell you.
Where does the Parsha start? Can you see that on your own?
Start at the beginning of the Parsha.
Yeah, what is the Parsha?
I can see Bereshit at the top of the page.
Good. What else is at the top?
But then
of the
there's
page?
like the name. So this is like Vitse.
Right. So what's this week's Parsha's name?
It's Vayigash.
Vayigash. Right. Can you find that on the top of the page?
Okay. No, Vayigash. Okay, I think I found it, but I don't know what. I think I found it.
What page you got?
I got the first page is 450.
Perfect. Thank you. So you found it for us. I didn't have to tell you. You told me.
Okay.
Does Vayigash mean approached?
Correct.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You got it from comparing the Hebrew to the English. Perfect. That's the way to learn. Great. So Vayigash means, and he approached. Exactly. That's what page you said. 4 what?
50.
4.
So it's almost at the end.
Yeah. Just one left, right? If you
Yeah.
look afterwards, just one more Parsha. Wow, we're gonna have a party. Do we have a party at the end of the Sefer, the book of one of the 5 books?
Yeah, we do.
I don't know. We should.
I agree. We should.
So we say
What do
Vis Hazak, Vis Hazak.
Good. When we read from the Torah, the reader says, Be strong. He adds in 3 words. That's the Jewish level of partying. say an extra 3 words. Chazak, chazak, v'nit chazak. Be strong, and be strong. We sort of give a greeting, a wish of strength. But in terms of an actual party at the end of one of the 5 books, we don't really make a big party till the end of the 5 books.
That'd be cool, though.
What's that party called?
Simchat Torah.
Exactly.
Right.
Terrific. Okay. So, what I'd like to present to you in the few minutes that we have is an idea that I read that I liked very much. You know, we're really in the 3rd of the 4th Parsha that speaks about Yosef and his brothers and their relationship. And it's really a major part of the whole book. 4 out of, I think there's 12. How many Parsha are there in Breshit? Breshit, Noach, Vayera, Chayis. Totals, Vayitza, Vayishlach.
50.
Vayishlach. And
50.
it's 15.
15 and then 50
Chapters, right.
Yeah.
15 Parsha though. So 4 out of 50, it's a third of the book. It's almost a third of the book, the story of Yosef and his brothers, right?
Yeah.
So that's a pretty major, hefty chunk
Mm-hmm.
of the book of Breshit. All that stuff about creation, very quickly. Then 1, 2 Parshas. Then Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. I guess you could say is the middle part.
Mm-hmm.
And the last part is what? The brothers. Yosef and his brothers. The 12 tribes.
But then the rest of the Torah is with Moshe.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Amazing. Moshe's the hero from then on. So central, right?
Yeah.
Gets called the Torah of Moshe, even though Moshe doesn't appear in the first book of Bereshit, right? Moshe is not born yet, if you're following the story chronologically.
Yep.
Okay, so let's talk about the book of Bereshit just for another few minutes. The last third, almost the third of the book of Bereshit is about Yosef and his brothers. What is the Torah teaching us? What's the central theme of this story? They spend quite I'd say Yosef and his brothers is parallel to Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. There was a third about Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and a third about Yosef and his brothers. Yet they were not the forefathers. They're not 3 of the top 3 of the forefathers. They were descendants. Think about that. I gotta try to get this working. Do you feel heat?
No, I don't.
No, it doesn't seem to be happening.
I feel like yesterday people were trying to use the remote and it had like this little locked button on it.
28.
Oh, no, it's closing.
Is it in Fahrenheit or Celsius? Because 31 is scorching.
There we go. Now it's coming.
Right, 31 Fahrenheit would be really cold.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not scorching.
But Celsius would be like.
It would be like a good summer
Yeah.
I'm from Canada, so that's
Yeah.
scorching for me.
for Canada.
Yeah. For
What would that
Canada,
be in Fahrenheit? 31.
Mm.
60 or something.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah. What is it in Fahrenheit? I don't know.
I don't know.
Maybe 90 something.
No,
It's like a day you can tan.
I just guess 60 because I don't know.
No, it's about 90, I guess.
90?
It's like if you add 60, then you got like that's the difference between Fahrenheit and Celsius.
It's about 87.8.
Yeah, okay,
Which isn't so bad.
almost.
Not so bad.
Yeah. That's really.
Maybe get into the 90s. It's kind of like, it's getting a little hot, and then like throw in some humidity with that, and I
Yeah.
don't want to be outside anymore.
Yeah, last summer we had a record for
In the
the
States.
heat. Yeah, and not in the States, for my state. My state.
Oh yeah, there's so many states. I forgot.
Yeah.
51? 52. States?
It's 50. It's 50 states.
50.
We have
They want it to be
territories as well.
52. That's why.
Yeah.
They want to have.
Well, actually, I do not really know. Like,
They want Washington D.C. to be a state, and they want.
Yeah. Puerto Rico is another
Puerto
one,
Rico, yeah.
and I think some
That's-
people suggested Guam and the Virgin Islands as well.
Yeah.
So
But those are considered what is the term?
territories.
so right now I have 50.
50 even.
56. Yeah.
And Washington D.C. is not really. It's kind of its own little weird thing.
Mhm.
I wouldn't mind if Puerto Rico were a state. I have a lot of friends in Puerto Rico that very much would like for it to be, but they're like, we have our own problems too, so maybe it's not good.
Mm.
It's
Yeah,
a
yeah. That's
it's an
right.
interesting
It
conversation.
is, yeah.
But I really do wish the best for them if that is what they think.
That
would be
sounds
best.
good.
Yes.
It seems to work now.
Yeah, in my state it was 113.
Maybe sometimes.
Oh,
13, like it's 40 degrees.
Max, yeah.
It's like 40 degrees.
Yeah, it's
Which
crazy.
state you're from?
Washington.
Washington.
It's very rare for that to
That
happen.
is wild. You said 113?
Yes. It's max, and it was like
Yeah, it's 45 Celsius.
Yeah.
That is.
it was like for the whole week was like 100, and then it was like a Wednesday and Thursday, and it was like that was crazy.
Wow.
It was pretty bad.
What states are you?
Washington State,
Washington
West
Up
Coast,
north, yeah.
right next, right below Canada, and then there's
Mhm.
California all the way at the bottom, Oregon, Washington.
I didn't know Washington could get that hot.
Yeah, it's
I always
crazy.
imagined it being more like a colder state.
It is in general more colder, but the summers are nice. It has seasons for sure. It's not all cold.
I was in Seattle just like a few years ago. It's such a beautiful place.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, Seattle's a nice place. It rains a lot more up there for sure than where I live.
Yo, states are
This,
huge.
Yeah, it's interesting.
It's
It's
not-
like everything's it's different everywhere you go. And the same thing here. Small
It's
state.
for me like when I'm asking like someone, are you from the States, United States? It's for me one country.
Mm.
Then but I'm from Philadelphia.
Yeah,
Philadelphia is a state, right? What's right? Philadelphia is a state.
Yes,
So
yes,
I'm
yes.
Philadelphia. I'm California. No.
They have
Florida.
their own countries. They are inside. That's kind of true.
For me, it's all the same.
I think it's like a city in Pennsylvania.
Philadelphia.
Yeah,
Philly.
There's no state like.
No, it's a city,
Yeah.
but it's in Pennsylvania. Which
Okay.
is-
So let's see.
And was the capital of Pennsylvania?
That is a.
Is it Philadelphia?
It's
I
East Coast,
don't know that off the
definitely.
top
I
of
know
my
that.
head. I knew that many years ago when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I'm assuming Harrisburg.
Harrisburg. Yeah.
Okay. Don't want to take up too much time. I wasn't so successful. In any case.
Is there a house technician? Mahomir, or
Yeah, there is exactly. There's some. I'll have to get him to do it, but I think it's just the remote. But
Maybe you should use new batteries.
could be. Well, that would be a great solution. Okay, so looking at the time, let's. So what do you? What'd you come up with? What's the big idea of Yosef and his brothers? Why does the Torah spend so much time on telling us
This
this
is
story?
the realization that the prophecy for Israel to become a nation, like the prophecy is coming true from this point, and Yaakov realizes it, and so does Joseph. And then when they meet up in Egypt, this is when the second dream is fulfilled, and they're in exile, but it's to build the nation.
Building the nation. Okay, good.
Even without a land, the Jews will still have Hashem. But the
Nice.
ultimate goal is to go to the land.
Got it. Good.
That's something.
Definitely forming a nation. 12 tribes. Yeah.
I think they spend so much time on all the brothers collectively in the story of the strife between them because in all the generations beforehand, it was about who will bear the torch as the one who passes on the covenant. And it only seems like it can be one or the other, but not all of them. But then we get to Yaakov and his sons, and it's like he doesn't want it to be that way. He wants all of his sons collectively to become a nation, to inherit the covenant together. And Hashem desires that. And it's about how can we keep everyone within the covenant, especially whenever looking forward in the future, there will be strife between the tribes at times. And things won't always be just this happy joyride where everything seems like it's going cheerful and perfect, but at the same time, living in a real world with real problems, strife between brothers and between tribes in a greater nation, you have to work out your differences sometimes. And I think it foreshadows what is to come and starts it off like there will be strife, but at the same time, it doesn't mean that those tribes still can't be a part of one big family.
Right.
And they can't work it out in the end.
Right. Good. Good. You're fleshing out a little bit what Ariel was saying. Same theme, really. That in order to create this nation, we need the people of the different tribes to work together, and this is new in Jewish history as opposed to what we had in the past. Good. Good. Any other thoughts? I mean, there's so much to learn from these stories. It's just. So I was thinking of another idea, and that there's a few verses, and we see that it comes to a head really here at the top of our Parsha. Yehuda comes and speaks on page 445 and 446. He tells the whole story, and in the end, Yosef reveals himself. But I want to take a look at, for a moment, the verses where Yosef reveals himself. And he tries to explain to the brothers, after, they're shocked, he goes at it a second time on page 450. 450. Page 450. Right, verse 4. He calls his brothers, "Come near to me, I pray you." And they came near, and he said, "Okay, everybody see where I am?"
Yep.
"I am Yosef, your brother." He said that already, but now he's repeating it and putting it in context. "Whom ye sold into Egypt." So he's not hiding the fact that they did something bad to him. They sold him down the river. There's no river, but they got to the river in the end. So but he did sell them. They did sell him. And then what does he say about that? "And now be not grieved." Why not be grieved? Nor be angry with yourself. Why not be angry with yourself? You did a horrible thing. Says, let him speak a little bit. "That you sold me hither." Don't be angry. Don't be grieved. What? Why not? Because to preserve life. Did God send me before you? He sent me to Egypt, I think. He sent. It could be also that God sent me before you to Shechem, where I was basically trapped and ambushed and sold. But God sent me there. God sent me there, and God sent me here to Egypt. You didn't do it. Sounds like what he's saying. And then he explains why. He says, "For these 2 years the famine has been in the land. There are 5 more years. Shall be neither plowing nor harvest. And God sent me," back to verse 7 now. "God sent me before you." So here it's clear that God sent me before you to Egypt. Right? In this context, God sent me before you, meaning chronologically, he sent me as your planning team, right? To set everything up for you. He sent me to Egypt to give you a remnant on the earth, to save you alive, and for a great deliverance. And then he says in verse 8 explicitly, "And now it was not you that sent me hither." What do you mean it wasn't you? "But God. And he hath made me father to Pharaoh, and Lord for all his house, and ruler of over the lands of Egypt." And then he tells him what to do. "Go bring your father and bring him back." But this is a fascinating thesis which Yosef presents. And it seems to be a theme, we don't have time to show it to you, throughout all the Parshas, many times, that did the brothers sell Yosef? I think they did. I read it in last week's Parsha, or 2 weeks ago. Here he says, no, you didn't. Well, no, he says you did. Don't be sad because you did it. So if they sold them, why should they not be sad? Well, because God did it also. So who did it? God or the brothers?
Both.
I think that's the answer. And I think that's a key thing to understand. It's not so simple. We only have 2 minutes, but it's called, when man acts, but he's fulfilling God's will. Right? That's what Yosef is claiming, that you did it, and maybe you really were terrible people. You really were, jealous, and you were violent. You would have killed me if not Reuben would have saved you, and you were cruel by selling me. But actually, you were fulfilling the will of God. So was man doing it? Were they being cruel And how is that supposed to make them feel? There's so many aspects to this. Forget about the interpersonal aspect and what the brothers felt. Did they feel, nonetheless, do they feel guilty? Did they accept it? They say, oh no, it's okay that we did all these sins because God was using us as an instrument. Did God force them to sin? Free will's basic principle, just as they weren't being forced. So maybe, so how can he say to them, don't be grieved, don't be sad, don't be angry with yourselves? And is that true? If you believe that God directs everything that happens in the world, does that mean that you shouldn't be angry with yourself if you do something wrong? Very basic principle in Judaism, that you should be, you have responsibility for your actions. We just spoke about it, the 13 principles of the Rambam, right? Reward and punishment. You're going to get punished if you do something wrong. What is Yosef telling them here? So, because we don't have a lot of time, I'll just try to give you one formulation of how to work this and what he seems to be introducing, and that is that, as David said, it's very hard to define, but God works through our decisions and our actions, because even though he gives us the free will and lets us make our mistakes, ultimately God's still running the show. He's got a plan. He's got a plan, and he made it so. Yosef tells them in his vision, in his retrospect. Now he kind of understands why. Maybe he never understood why either. Maybe he was angry at the brothers earlier. Sounds like he was being pretty mean to them at the beginning of the story, last week's Parsha. So maybe he didn't realize it until now either. But now, for some reason, he realizes it, that God has a plan. And God has mysterious ways to make it happen, and makes it happen through our sins and through our, which we shouldn't have done. I guess we have to say that if they wouldn't have done the sin, God would have done it in another way. But basically what he seems to be saying to them is, look on the bright side. The bright side of things is not that you're scum and that you, the point is, obviously, I think Yosef is telling them you should try to learn from that and learn from your mistakes. And that's what you guys were saying, that we have to learn to live together. Ultimately, the brothers have to learn to create one nation. But the theological principle is teaching them is that even though we make our mistakes, God is working through our actions to make a greater plan happen. And the greater plan is he wanted the Jewish people to survive. And that's why he sent me to become the viceroy of Egypt, so that all the people will be not starving in the land of Canaan, but and we know ultimately they multiplied and they reproduced and became the great nation that left Egypt with 600,000 men, right? So I think there's more places where I could show you that this theme comes up, this theme of Yosef presenting himself and understanding himself as an agent of God. Now he's saying, you, the brothers, even in your sins, are an agent of God. And this is a theme which is very basic to religious life. I think that's also something to think about when we read this week's Parsha and these 4 Parshas of Sefer Bereshit. We have to stop here and wish you a Shabbat Shalom.
Shalom.
And look forward to continuing to study with you next week. Shabbat Hashem. All right?
Likewise.
Sure, that's it.